trying to find who you are, where you fit in.
And it actually did not suicide his political career whatsoever. Or it's depending. I'm just gonna say my opinion, which is fuck no.
Hey, what's up, guys? This is the Doom Scroll Club. We are excited to have you today. Today, we're talking about Trump's ballroom upgrade that's happening. We've got updates on the Epstein files and the shenanigans going on with that. We are also going to be talking about the potential Nazi who is going to be trying to run for governor of California. So, a bunch of exciting things. Cody, how are you doing today?
Yeah, pretty good. There's a lot of things just constantly happen in the news, developments with the Epstein stuff, but also, more things that were kind of just like, well, that it doesn't seem normal, but it's hard to know because, the other side's always like perfectly fine with whatever is happening. And then we're over here like freaking out. And so just like, how do you decipher what is real anymore?
Yeah.
So, yeah. But other than that, not a whole lot new personally, just trying to pay attention to all the news.
There's a
Um,
lot of it.
yeah. How about you?
About the same. Just working every day and then coming home and seeing all the disasters that seem to be happening every single day. So it's nice to always get and chat with you and talk through all this stuff.
Yeah, because doom scrolling is more fun with friends and
It's more
more
friends with
friends,
fun.
more friends with fun. Friends with doom scroll benefits.
Mhm.
So anywho, should we jump
We
into
should
our
make a T-shirt that
first
says that.
friends with doom scroll benefits?
Yep.
Should we get into our first topic?
Yeah. I believe we are going to be covering Trump's White House ballroom project. So it was announced on July 31st that this is a $200 million, 90,000 square foot state ballroom addition to the East Wing. It's starting construction in September of 2025 and supposed to finish before Trump's term ends in 9. Trump's team says it'll host world-class events to show American strength, funded by Trump himself and donors. No taxpayer hit per the White House. Critics are blasting it as a legacy project ego trip, especially with weak jobs numbers and tariffs jacking up costs. Cody, what do you think about this?
I guess it's good that it's not supposedly going to be taxpayer funded. I know that would have been even worse, but $200 million is $200 million. And do you know how far that could go to help feed people who are in need or house people who are in need? And it's just interesting how these are the same people who, there's the same president who signed an executive order to basically institutionalize homeless folks or mentally ill folks. And they're just like, well, you're going to jail, but we're building a $200 million ballroom onto the White House. It
Covered
just
in gold.
seems, yeah, it just seems fucked up, and it doesn't actually help the American people at all. We are never going to step foot in this ballroom ever. The American people are never going to step foot in it. It's for the rich people. It's for the fucking oligarchs that run our goddamn country. Uh, yeah. So I'm not excited about it. I feel like it's very unnecessary. And can you imagine what could get done if instead of putting that money towards a ballroom, whether it's just Trump's money with donors, like they have the opportunity and like the
The
privilege
privilege.
to actually help people out with their money, and instead they choose to do this bullshit. So yeah, that's what I think about it.
Now, I am all for, upgrading buildings and, having pride in your country or your state and wanting to, host people and have things look really nice. I'm all for that. There's a time and a place. We are definitely in a recession. As you said, we have high poverty right now. We have low jobs, high expenses. this just shouldn't be a priority right now. If prices were down, jobs were looking good, and people were able to get housing adequately, be able to feed their families adequately on one job and not have to work multiple jobs, I'd be down for it. If we have that extra money, like, yeah, I'd rather have that go to making our spaces look nicer than, military stuff. I mean, as they've said, this isn't coming from taxpayer money, but we've also been in the situation when it came to the wall his last term where that wasn't supposed to be taxpayer money. That was supposed to be Mexico paying for it. So, we really don't know until it's done, unfortunately, But yeah, like I said, I'm all for improvements, but there's a time and a place, and it's not now.
Yeah. Yeah, it just seems weird. Plain and simple, just weird. Like, what other president at this point would be like, we're going to add 200 million ballroom to the White House because nothing else is going on in the world. This is exactly what we need to do. So yeah, again, it just kind of shows how out of touch, this administration is, and it's nothing new. We know they're out of touch. Trump's been rich since he was born. So yeah, just fucking sucks.
And we should have a poll in today's episode. Be like, what do you think? Should they be doing the construction or not? Um,
Yeah. The poll would be like, what do you think about the ballroom? Poor taste or whatever. I don't care. That's the poll.
yeah.
So on to the next thing from that. Do you want to go into the new developments with the Epstein situation?
Yeah. So unfortunately, I mean, I feel like this podcast so far has just turned into Trump updates and Epstein updates.
The Epstein files.
Yeah, it's every single week, almost actually it's pretty much every single day. But Ghislaine Maxwell, who's supposed to be serving 20 years, she just got transferred on August 1st. So that would be yesterday. We're recording on the 2nd, to a low security Texas prison right after 2 days of chats with Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche. Who is a Trump appointee. Victims are yelling cover up, and a key Epstein survivor's family begged Trump not to pardon her. House Oversight postponed her deposition to August 11th, awaiting on SCOTUS review of her appeal. But ongoing lawsuits might force the DOJ to cough up more files despite Trump's stonewalling. Trump calls it a hoax, but X is exploding with demands for full release. So multiple things on this, obviously it's definitely suspicious when days after talking with Trump people, that she's now getting transferred to a low security place. I would not be surprised if she gets pardoned. And the other thing we've heard is that FBI and I believe CIA people have confirmed that Trump has been what's the word, redacted from all of the Epstein files. So his name has been taken out, which means it is in there, but it's been blacked out, or pages have been blacked out whenever it's referring to him. So is this, him talking to Ghislaine being like, if you backed that I wasn't a part of this, you're going to be out in years versus 20 years or months, Unfortunately, we won't know, but, you know, when it smells like a fish and looks like a fish, it's definitely Trump. So, we know, it's not going to be going in a good place. So,
Yeah. This is something I was anticipating happening the moment they talked about having her testify in front of Congress. I just was like, they would have done this already if there wasn't something shitty happening on the background. So it's almost those worst fears coming true of, okay, they're going to, she's not testifying unless she gets some sort of reduction in her sentencing, pardon, clemency, whatever. I mean, they've already moved her to a low security Texas prison, so that's one step closer to something. And she's going for what she wants. And I almost see it as Trump's willing to do anything to clear his name. And I would not be surprised if he did pardon her or something, reduce sentence, something along those lines to, have her name off basically anyone but him. I'm sure she'll be naming specifically Democrats, which is like the same time. Okay, even if she does that and it's true, then okay, those people also, deserve what they deserve. Doesn't matter what side of the political spectrum you fall on, you do something wrong, you do something wrong. I'm okay with all that. However, the fact that, I feel like she's saying, I will make sure to leave you out of it, or even maybe try to validate that he was not involved in exchange for a pardon. And then we have someone who worked directly with Epstein, who was, said by some of the survivors was even worse than Epstein. And to have her pardoned, I feel like would be a huge mistake. And it's funny, I saw a tweet by Candace Owens saying that if Trump pardons Ghislaine, however you say her fucking name, if he pardons her, that's political suicide. But the funny thing will it? Because I feel like Trump has committed political suicide many, many times, and it actually did not, suicide his political career whatsoever.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I always feel like whenever we talk about this, I just get lost for words because, in my head, it's just so common sense. And I don't know, it's just horrible. Like, we have these people who were victims and they have to keep reliving this every single time, dealing with the trauma that they've gone through. And to not get justice is one thing, but to also like be used as kind of like a ploy or a scheme for political benefit. That's just horrible. But yeah, you called it. There's gonna be a deal, which obviously there already is because she's been moved. Like you said, I wouldn't be surprised if it's Trump wasn't involved. They were just friends. He never they barely knew each other. He doesn't draw things in cards. I can attest to that. Just whatever. And then definitely we'll see every Democrat that can be named in that. And like you said, if there's proof and it's true, then yeah, they need to be convicted and they need to, face charges. But I also wouldn't be surprised at this point if, there's going to be some false allegations being spread back because that helps, his whole hoax thing. And at this point, Delaine's going to do whatever Delane needs to do to get out.
Yeah, for sure. And it's interesting to just to kind of it feels like more gets released or more is unraveled on a weekly basis about Trump Epstein relationship. And there's this guy I found on Instagram who wrote multiple books on, let's see, he wrote multiple books on I think Bill Clinton and Trump. And then he was in the process of gathering information to write a book on Epstein. So he's got 5 years worth of material that he was going to use, and released some voice recordings of Epstein on X before the election, which actually got him banned from X, which is not an easy task. So impressive. But let me see if I can find his name so people can follow him and listen. The stories are fascinating just because it's stuff you haven't heard, because he had a relationship with Epstein because he was working with him to get information about his life because he was going to write a book, right? So his name is Michael Wolff, and every video that he puts out is a story about Epstein and Trump, and he's in a different place in his house every video. So just adds a little, touch to it. But yeah, he goes into detail with all the things. It's very, very interesting to listen to. So that is going to be at Michael Wolff NYC on Instagram if you want to get a look into some of the things that aren't really so much in mainstream media. But I think he has a lot of credibility. Yeah, right. So,
I mean,
yeah.
what
Sorry, go for it.
I don't know. We should ask our two viewers. I mean, should Ghislaine or should someone like Ghislaine, should they even be offered a pardon? Is the information that they are providing negate all the damage that they've done?
Yeah, that's a good question for the audience, but I'm gonna strafe. I'm just gonna say my opinion, which is fuck no, because
Yeah.
especially since she's the only one that's been in prison. But like the survivors have said, she was the one that recruited these women and brought them
Mhm.
into the situation and was actually mean and worse and abusive. So she's not any better than Epstein. It's like you would like to think that a woman would know better, but not in this case. I think she's even worse because she knew women would trust her, and you cannot trust this. You could not trust
Yeah.
her for sure. And
Yeah.
that's another argument, is that even if she, you know, says to testify, or she decides to, she's actually been known to be like a massive liar.
Mhm.
So, yeah, although, you're supposed to tell the truth under oath, that doesn't necessarily mean she's gonna.
Yeah.
What's it gonna do? She's already in prison. She she doesn't have, like, especially if lying gives her a pardon, she's gonna do it. Like, look who's president. You think she's gonna tell the truth when the president can't even tell the fucking truth to save his life? I don't think so.
Yeah. I 100% agree.
Yeah. So that's fun times. There's also been some other stuff that has come out about the video, the Epstein video that they've been showing us, and how, like, there wasn't a missing minute, or they gave whatever with the missing minute, but I'll have to like look it up more. I didn't unfortunately research it more since I last came across it, but it was something about how the cell that the video is focused on in that video they released, it's not even
Mhm.
Epstein's cell. The only reason they released that part is because that was the only camera that was working at the time. And you can see in like the main kind of
Mhm.
common area, and then you can see like the, you know, officer station. So you see him walking by, and that's the last time you see Epstein walking into his cell. And you can kind of see him walking by, and they kind of start going up the stairs, and then they go out of view. And so, because that was like the one camera, you cannot see people going in and out or up and down the stairs. People are like, that gives plenty of opportunity for someone to have done anything in there.
Yeah.
Like, and this whole time we thought we were looking at his cell, but it was just that we were not looking at
Mhm.
his cell specifically. I'll have to look more into that, but from what I gather, that's what they're trying to express. It's like, this isn't even, we're not even looking in the right place.
Yeah. I mean, there's just so many things wrong with that whole video.
Yeah.
Sometimes cameras, have issues, or it was this time every single day. This is when the cameras reset. And it's like that just happens to be the time that
Yeah.
he dies. Like none of it makes sense.
No, no. And people are like, yeah, that's not a common thing, like
Uh-uh.
it just, yeah. And they, they could easily they could prove to us that that happens, every night by showing us. Not that they wouldn't be able to also fake that, because it would be really
Yeah.
easy to fake that. But there's little things they could do to like prove their things that they're telling us, and then they just can't back it up, and then the story changes. It's like the story changes constantly, and I think that is
Uh-huh.
the thing that is continually a red flag for everybody. And we're at this point where he's just throwing out every distraction imaginable. It's like, you have to catch it and let it go, catch it and let it go, so that
Uh-huh.
you don't follow the distraction. But he's trying real hard, and I think he knows his base and how easily he can distract them, which I forgot we didn't even write down to talk about the whole situation with Hillary, and how they released documents about the Russia hoax, and how it was
Uh-huh.
manufactured to prevent him from being elected in 2016 because of, and she wanted to distract from her email situation. And so that has been interesting. And it's hard to know, like, okay, of course, this is a distraction, but there's probably also some truth behind this, which is also not a good thing, because it doesn't matter what side you're on. Like, imagine, and I'm sure Republicans have done similar things. We just don't have the documents to, back it up. But let's say you know, Biden is president. We're in 2020. And then we find out that the Hillary's emails thing was manufactured and there's, stuff to back it up. And we find this out when Biden is president. That would be a big deal, right? So it is still a big deal, flip flopped. And that's one thing I'm always trying to be fair about and not just be like, that was nothing. That they didn't do that. I wasn't sure. It's like we do, due diligence to see and point out the corruption on the left, just as much as the right. Otherwise, we're just as bad as MAGA. We're in our echo chamber. We're in a cult. We don't want to like believe that the politicians on this side would never do anything wrong. And it's just like, fuck. Like they're both fucked up and they both
Yeah.
have corruption within them. So to be the bigger people, we have to be able to criticize our own side. You just have to. So,
You have
do you
to be
want me
able to
to?
criticize.
Sorry, go for it.
I was just gonna say we have to be able to criticize, our own sides, but also I feel like consequences need to match what is happening. Like with the Hillary Clinton email scandal, right? Trump's whole thing was like lock her up, like she needs to go to prison for this. Same with like our side on Trump with, him taking all the classified documents to Mar-a-Lago. I think, and I could be wrong in this, but like when it comes to like Hillary Clinton, if it's, she was sending emails from a not secure server, yeah, that's a problem and that's violating, safety protocols. That's not something you should get locked up in prison for. That's something to where like you get fired and you're not able to hold a job in office ever again because you violated a safety protocol. That's not a prisonable defense. And I think Trump, it's a little bit different because he held onto classified documents and then when the FBI came to collect them, he hid them. So that is then a different thing. But I think if he just had the classified documents and FBI came and said, hey, you're not supposed to have these, and he just gave them all and was like, oh, my bad, I misunderstood. Possibly a same thing of like, okay, you shouldn't be able to hold office, because you violated a safety thing. But I don't think he should go to prison for that.
Yeah.
But it's turned into this whole like any little thing we can find, like that someone needs to be, held to a higher standard almost. And then we're talking about, Hillary Clinton with Russia. I think last week it was, he said that Trump initiated a whole Russia scandal to go after Obama. But also Vladimir Putin has admitted to being involved in like trying to sway, the elections. It's not like nothing happened and it was a hoax. It was like, no, something did happen. We just don't know what level it got to. But yeah, that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know if you saw that clip where Putin was asked if they had essentially helped to get Trump elected or wanted. And then he said yes. And I can't remember the rest of it, but it was a clip that they cut out that part of it. I don't know if it was on Fox News or something, but
Yeah.
they showed the real clip and it had him like admitting that they were wanting him to be elected. But yeah, so I feel
Also,
like
Trump
it's
himself has admitted that they've cheated like multiple times now. So I'm like, I don't know why people are surprised.
yeah, yeah, unless it's just this way of trolling people, but it's hard to tell these days like what is him just trolling and trying to distract because he knows if he said something like that that gives him a solid like week for him to just do whatever he wants because people will be freaking out about him saying like I couldn't attend it with Elon, you know, he's why I wanted or whatever. It's just like then
Yep.
you're like, and then something else is happening and that was a distraction. So you have to think like he's dumb, but he's not. There's usually always a reason behind what he's doing or saying, and that's something we need to pay attention to and not falling for the culture wars. If we think about trans people, that was a massive distraction. It still is. But what they do, both on the left and the right, they create the culture wars to distract you from what is actually happening. and you get the cultures fighting, which actually doesn't help the average American at all. And how much does banning XYZ of trans people help people afford better, more groceries or better
Uh-huh.
housing or etc. or better health care? It just doesn't. It's because they know if they keep us busy and fighting with each other, they can stay rich and keep, doing whatever they want just to put more
Uh-huh.
money in their pockets. And it sucks. And I wish we could be more united and realize that as a whole, to be like, this is bullshit. We're fighting over shit that doesn't matter. And they're
Yeah.
trying to get us to do that. So I wish we could all be like, you know what? It's not left versus right. It's actually kind of like poor versus rich. And that's where we all need to come together and be like, this
Yeah.
is bullshit.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even left versus right anymore. We're having people in the same party who are infighting. I mean, you look at Pete Buttigieg. He spoke out on trans people in sports, and he wasn't like, no, trans people need to be in sports, or no, everyone needs to accept trans people in sports. He did a very political response, saying like, there is a key of unfairness that has to be looked at. Which, as a trans person, like that's true. There is, like, depending on the situation, it's not all the situations, but there can be, and I think it's the same. It's not even necessarily trans people. I mean, there's the same in just binary gendered sports. Men take steroids. That is an unfair advantage towards other men who aren't taking steroids. But because of his comment, you have people in the same party who are now attacking him as being transphobic or whatever. That is, again, a distraction. And instead of like uniting and unifying and trying to help, it's tearing us apart. And I mean, that's exactly how Trump won the first election, was, people infighting between Bernie and Hillary, you know, and Bernie wasn't the pick. That sucked. Hillary was the pick, but then it was like, well, I'm not going to choose Hillary, so I'm just not going to vote. Or I'm going to vote for Trump because, whatever. But that's how they get us, is like causing infighting with us. So if we're not strong together, we're not going to beat what's happening.
Yeah. And I think, I don't know, people might think this is bullshit, but I almost feel like him giving a political response. And he did start with, saying that it needs to be approached with compassion. And I think that word is something that is void on the right hand side.
Uh-huh.
But I feel as him giving a political response and not just taking a black and white stand was almost like taking a stand for us, because at base level, we know that he is not against trans people, but he has his hands tied a little bit because he knows he has to appeal to moderates, and going to, black and white for either side can potentially, make things a little harder if he's running for president. And I feel much safer if he was elected versus if it was another Republican, like if JD Vance is running in, the next election. Who am I going to prefer, Pete or JD? Just because,
Yeah.
Pete gave kind of a, not straightforward answer, but still address the fact that it needs to be about compassion first and foremost.
Uh-huh.
And it's just kind of like, as a trans person, I know we are 1% of the population, and they cannot continue to run their campaigns off of 1% of the population. And I also am someone who's kind of like, you know, we are just people, just like everyone else, and we just want to
Uh-huh.
blend in and we want to live our lives. So to keep kind of bringing attention to us also doesn't always make sense. I think,
Yeah.
you know, being being aware that we need healthcare and standing up and being loud for that is one thing, but that's most of what we're needing. We just want to live. So if we don't want more rights taken away, I feel like, unfortunately, we're going to have to be okay with people on the left giving moderate responses.
Uh-huh.
Like, I didn't feel any particular way. I wish it wasn't like that. But unfortunately, where we are right now, that's what has to be done in order for the left to kind of catch up. It's this shitty kind of sacrifice thing, but he knows, because we're the scapegoat, He knows we're a distraction. Anyone that's 1% of the population is just a fucking distraction, and I think he knows that.
Yeah. Like right now we're fighting just for our basic rights, you know. It's scary like when you look at Project 2025 and like what their plan for trans people is, which is basically like criminalizing them and making them registered sex offenders. So it's scary when you're looking at like that as a possibility in the next few years, um, because we're already at like 46 or 47% through Project 2025, and that's still like that's I wouldn't say worst case scenario because there's unfortunately an even worse case scenario than that. But there's still hope that that's not going to happen. But like, yeah, I would love for there to be, more trans people in sports or more trans people in anything. I feel like as a human being, I don't feel like there should be limitations on living. If it's not affecting other people, if it's not hurting someone, there shouldn't be limitations on what you're doing. But right now, we are looking at possibly not being able to exist. So we have to be a little more open and more safeguarded. And we need to, as a trans community, we need to be trying to get more allies. And you don't get more allies by attacking anyone who doesn't say exactly what you want them to say. We have to have open mindedness to like, it's not my way or the highway. It's, there's going to be gray areas, there's going to be compromise. I would rather compromise and not have trans people in sports and know that trans people are safe and they're able to get their medication and they're able to keep their health insurance and they're able to change their names and their gender markers and be able to travel safely. I would give up that for that. Everything else is just an added benefit. So if we can get through this and still be able to exist and feel safe and not feel like, we're seeing people in Ohio, like trans people in Ohio that are already like leaving the country, because their children have lost their rights to healthcare, so I don't know. I try not to jump to the worst case scenario, but I do feel like, this is the time where it's like we have to let some things go and like still fight for our rights, still know that what we're trying to do or, whatever, but we have to focus on keeping allies and making sure that we're at least safe to exist right now.
Yeah, I think that's a good point of, we have to look at our priorities. And obviously, existing, having access to medical care is going to be our number one priority. So, if we're dealing with someone who we know is going to safeguard that for us, they're on our team. And I know, he didn't say exactly what we would have wished, but no candidate is perfect. And you have to just, unfortunately, as trans people, like there's a lot of sacrifices that we have to make through our lives. And it sucks that we have to think of that being one more. But yeah, living, surviving is definitely a priority. And I know we don't want to just survive, we want to thrive. But I think we have to take those steps as they come. There's trans people still are allowed in sports depending where you're at and leagues and stuff. But one thing that they did in California this year, which I not a lot of people they didn't get a lot of backlash for it, but it was actually a pretty good idea that I had never thought about. So there was a big uproar about this trans girl who was on the track team, and she was, winning. I think went to nationals, and there was like, oh, there's this biological man running against these girls and it's not fair and stuff. And so what they did is so she ended up winning, but whoever got second was also placed in first. So I thought that was pretty awesome. I think it might have even been like third place as well or something. Like they got the first place along with her. And so even if there was an advantage, it wouldn't matter. The other girl that got second was still
Mhm.
put into first place. And I just thought that was like a really great compromise. And
Mhm.
they showed the girls up on the podium and it was a sweet moment. And They were all super polite to each other, to the trans girl. The trans girl was like super nice to them. They were celebrating together. And it didn't have to be this crazy black and white thing. They got to do what they loved. They got to, run their hardest and compete. And no one was hurt. Nothing happened. And everyone went home happy. And so I think definitely chances for more circumstances like that, as long as we don't people aren't, especially on the right, they're just not demonizing it constantly and thinking that it has to be black and white. And that's the thing I think we're trying to hammer home, is that, and that's something that Pete's trying to hammer home, is that
Mhm.
it's complicated.
Yeah.
Like it just is. So I don't think anyone needs to know the answer right now. I don't think anyone left needs to take a complete black or white stance on something. There is some nuance to it. There's nuance
Mhm.
to everything, but there is definitely nuance to this topic specifically. And of course, we want things to be fair. We want trans people to be able to thrive and do the things they want to do. But there's some things to figure out. This is a new territory. So we got to kind of ride the rough waves, ride the turbulence for a while
Mhm.
until we come to a good solution.
Well, there's also validity in parents' feelings. Obviously people can take things too far, but if you love your child and you've watched your child work so hard, whether it's sports or academics, and they lose out to anyone, any parent's going to be like, well, that's not fair. It doesn't matter if it's a trans person or not. You're always going to look for, like, because you love your kid and you know what your kid has done, and you believe everyone believes their kid is the best, right? Most parents, there are parents who are assholes and don't care about their kids, but good parents, they see the world in their kids, and so I can understand someone being like, a trans girl on a team and being uneducated in trans people and what that means with hormones and everything. I can understand a parent being like, well, yeah, they have an unfair advantage. They have this, and this. That's not fair to my daughter who has busted her ass every day to win this. I can see that. It doesn't make it right, but I can see that and I can understand that. Where I really have a problem though is when we see parents or other adults at sports events, especially when it's minors,
Mhm.
and you're seeing a transphobic slurs, you're seeing these kids getting harassed at a game. That's not okay. You can fight for your kid if you feel like an injustice has happened. You can fight for them and dive deeper, talk to school boards, but not in a bad way. Like if it is that someone has an unfair advantage, okay, let's look into it. I like what you said about what California is doing. That is a good compromise. For someone to be like, well, the trans girl won by however much, but we're still going to give them first place, and the you know cis girl as well. That seems like a fair compromise.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so too. I think that was a good idea. Whoever thought of that, I don't know who it is, but props. So we'll see how things kind of unfold and develop. But I do know there's been some impact on, they've Kaiser around here stopped doing gender affirming care for people under 19. And that's in California, even with protections in place. So it does have, it spreads, fear spreads. And it's also, youth transitioning is also another controversial issue, not just the sport, but the youth thing, because it's one thing I was thinking about is kind of ironic, and it kind of made me think a little bit. And I'm not necessarily trying to play devil's advocate, but it was just something that sunk in for me, where when it comes to the Epstein stuff, and we have people trying to like almost be like, well, there was a 16-year-old girl or something. At least she wasn't like 12 or 10 or something. And the argument is she's 16. She cannot consent as a 16-year-old. If you remember what you're like at 16, you're just
Uh-huh.
like, I was not the brightest. I didn't know who I was. And yeah. So it's like, okay, so if someone cannot consent at 16 because their brains are not developed and you're not able to make great decisions sometimes.
Mhm.
And we can say that with certainty when it comes to sex, sexual encounter, sexual assault. But when it comes to gender transition, we are much like they know who they are. They can make the decision. They can make the decision to have surgery or like permanent life altering things. And so I think as, trans people or people on the left, we kind of have to think about that a little bit and be like, ooh, how are we so sure that someone who's under 19 can make the right decision regarding surgeries, hormones, and their body, etc., etc. But we definitely know they can't make the right decision when it comes to their sexual encounters
Mhm.
and stuff like that. So I just saw some a little hypocrisy there, I guess.
Yeah.
And so it just made me think. That's all. It just made me think.
No, I completely agree. I think, we've touched on this topic before, and it is such a sensitive topic, especially within our own community. I'm more on the side, like, I flip flop. I don't want to say flip flop, but I see both sides, and that's probably my Libra, personality. But I had a horrible childhood because I didn't know what being trans was. I knew what I felt inside, but there were no words for me to express that. It wasn't something that was educated in school at all. There was no guidance counselors, from I want to say like the age of 10, I only wore boy clothes, so like that should have been a sign of someone to like talk and be like, "Hey, whatever." But I had a horrible time in middle and high school because I was so uncomfortable in my own body after puberty hit. I used to be very active in elementary school. I played every single sport. I was in, theater. I did everything. I was very outgoing. And the second I hit puberty, it was just like all of that went down. I started gaining weight. I mean, I don't want to just get into my life story because that's not interesting to anyone. But the point
Sure, it is.
is, if I would have had that knowledge and that education about being trans, the way I felt, I knew that would have been the right choice for me. Would have been to stop to have puberty blockers. I knew from probably 6 or 7 that I was like, I feel like a boy. I want to be a boy. I don't feel like a girl. This isn't right. Puberty blockers probably would have given me a much better childhood, more confidence in myself in those developing years that I still struggle with today. I probably would have tried harder in school because I would have enjoyed going to school. I probably would have gone to college, and, like just so many things that, like, yeah, if this happened, a butterfly effect, whatever. But I can also see, when without being in a kid's head, people are so impressionable and it's so easy, especially when you're starting puberty or, going through
Yeah.
middle school, going through high school. That's the hardest years for any kid, really. You're trying to find who you are, where you fit in, what your path is in life. And it's super easy to see other people who are struggling similarly and thinking, "Oh, that's the path I need to be on too." I think when it comes down to it is the choice for children to start any puberty blockers or have any surgeries or start hormones. I think that needs to be a choice between the child and that child's family. I don't think government should be involved. I don't think it should be a situation where a kid can go to a doctor and get any of those things without having parental approval. I think that needs to be seriously something that's just within the family and they make that decision. Because also, if a child is going through that process and doesn't have a safe, supportive home, that's also a big issue. But yeah, I think that's, probably the safest take that I can think of because not everyone has the same story. Not everyone has, you know, the same feelings from day one. So it's not right, I think, for anyone to declare what everyone needs to do, especially people who don't know trans people or haven't educated themselves in the right way. So I think the best way moving forward, if things need to change, it has to be based on the parents and the kid. So they know their kid the best. And if they're wrong, if a kid grows up and they turn 19, they turn 20, they've moved out, and they're like, I want to do this, they can do it, But at least, I don't know. That's just my
No,
2 cents.
yeah, totally. So yeah, I'm in the same boat. I feel like definitely I'd be someone who would have benefited from, puberty blockers and that sort of thing. But again, didn't have the language for it. You know, didn't know it existed. Basically thought I was a boy until puberty and was like, what the fuck is this?
Mhm.
So that's why it always makes it a hard thing to think about because it's just like, yes, people can benefit from it for sure. There have been kids who benefited from it. But then
Mhm.
there's also been kids who didn't and detransitioned and it that's not great. So it's one of those don't have there's a lot of nuance. It isn't black and white. There's no one size fits all solution. So all we can do is just kind of take it one person at a time and try to figure it out together. But the hate and just the sweeping restrictions of things, not the answer. So yeah, I don't know how we got on that topic.
Me either.
But I think it was like the criticizing our own party, and then
Mhm.
Pete Buttigieg to that was a pipeline. So to go back to like the Hillary and that sort of thing. So just a tweet from Cash Patel. He said in 2017-18, I proved the Steele dossier was a fictitious intelligence weaponized by corrupt FBI officials to see a federal judge and unlawfully spy on then presidential candidate Trump's campaign, all paid by uh, all paid for by his opponents. The media called me a liar. Now I'm the FBI director. We just uncovered burned bags, room filled with hidden Russiagate files, including the Durham Annex, and declassified them. Once again, I released the prior FBI's own documents and exposed the truth. The same media is calling me a liar again. Maybe this FBI will release more docs directly from the FBI HQ so we can see who's lying. Wouldn't want to deprive the fake news of more bogus. I don't know. Yeah. So that's what he's saying with that. We'll probably see more developments from there.
Mhm.
But yeah, if Hillary weaponized the FBI, CIA against a potential presidential candidate, of course that's not okay. Uh, but we just kind of got to see what all develops from that because it's kind of fresh still. Yeah, great distraction from the Epstein files.
Right? Exactly. So moving on, should we talk about Trump's latest firing? Because
Yeah,
we know that's
definitely.
his favorite word. You're
Hmm.
fired.
Yeah, that's a good one to move on to.
How about do you want to take this one away?
Sure. So Trump, he fired the BLS commissioner over the jobs numbers. So on August 1st, right after the July jobs report dropped, only 73,000 jobs added, way below 109K expected. Unemployment ticked to 4.2%. Trump fired BLS Commissioner Erica McTarfer. He raised
McIntarfer?
McIntyre, yeah. He raged on Truth Social, calling the data rigged and fake without proof, even though revisions show it's legit. It's legit bad news tied to tariffs and slowdowns. White House is defending its needed change, but even some Republicans are slamming it as overreach. And I think that is one of those things you pay attention to be like, this is looking bad. Just it's very much so like authoritarianism to fire someone because you don't like the numbers and they're real numbers. So now he's just going to hire someone that's going to produce fake numbers and create propaganda. That it's like we're not, as the American people, we can tell when we're in a recession. We have friends that are losing their jobs. We have rising grocery costs. We have, if you're a business owner, you can't fucking sell shit. That's, you can tell when things are not going well. Does he just think that gaslighting us on this is gonna work? I don't understand.
Yeah, no, I mean, he's not a good politician. I mean, maybe he's a good politician, but he's been pushing like tariffs and all this stuff for so long. And as someone who's worked in the manufacturing business, sorry, my eye is twitching, I'm getting stressed reading all this. As someone who's worked in that, I've seen how his last round as president, how his tariffs affected manufacturing companies. The fact trying to get goods in was, you know we're basically paying for the product just to to sell it at usually a loss at that point. Yeah, I mean the fact that he fired this person. Um, I think I also read something. I'd have to double check, but I read something too that the previous month's numbers were actually wrong too. That like we were way lower than what was announced. So, I mean, we know things are bad. I mean, for anyone to say otherwise, like if you just walk around, like things are bad. I mean, you were looking at, I think it was Ford and General Motors said that they lost like millions of dollars this year because of the tariffs, when normally they're, profiting like a billion or a couple $1 billion. Like they're negative. It's bad. I mean, we're just in a situation where like all of these tariffs are happening. We've got steel, aluminum, electronics. That's everything. So whether you're in construction or you're trying to buy a new house or you're trying to buy a new car, like everything is going to go up, and we already don't have the money to cover that. So I don't know. We'll see. But I think that's another clear indicator that if someone doesn't bend the knee to Trump, they're going to get fired. So, I mean, who knows who's going to be left standing at the end? It's all just going to be people put in place that will say and do whatever Trump says.
Yeah. Yeah. He's literally just surrounding himself with people who will do whatever he wants, which is, yeah, that's the scary part. And yeah, that move of firing the BLS commissioner was kind of a new red flag, being like,
Yeah.
okay, this is getting worse, because he's already suing media outlets and all that
Mhm.
stuff, and kind of suppressing free speech with that.
Well, did you hear anything about the Paramount deal that happened with Trump?
A little bit, but I haven't looked into it super deep.
So Paramount is trying to sell to another company. So they're trying to get rid of Paramount to another company. In order to do that, I think it's the Trade Commission, I believe. Apparently, Trump has to sign off on it. So they were already in a lawsuit between Paramount and Trump, because I think Trump was suing them over 60 Minutes because he said that they were biased against him. They settled that. They just gave Trump money even though they didn't have to because it was First Amendment. And they also agreed that they were going to do like a bias department. So they were going to have a department that directly works with Trump to make sure that nothing on Paramount is going on that's like bias against Trump. So yeah, I do like the fact though that South Park signed I believe a $1.5 billion contract with them before this or right after this happened, and then they have been doing episodes where like they are just taking the
Yeah.
piss off of Trump. It is some of the I haven't watched South Park in so long, and I'm like I have to watch it now just because it's so good.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty funny. So South Park is going to continue on to do its thing, so we'll just kind of watch out for that.
Yeah.
But it's crazy how much there's never been a president that I know of that has gone to this extent to censor media outlets. And not to say that it's okay for certain media outlets to be biased, essentially, but like there is always going to be a bias because we're humans. It doesn't matter if it's a bias, if it's true. Oh, it's like, are they biased, or is it just like he doesn't like that they're airing his bullshit? uh yeah. So you know it's just a whole lot of things happening that shouldn't really be happening, because we have a guy in the White House that has a very fragile ego, so he'll
Mhm.
do anything to make himself look good, and he's just basically banking that his base is gonna be okay with the testimony of Ghislaine Maxwell, and
Yeah.
anything he does, they'll just start to believe, and he knows he has loyalist followers, and
Mhm.
they say it every day. I will always support Trump. I will always support Trump. And it's just like, damn, even if you found out he was a pedophile, okay, well, that's your thing, because I ain't supporting
Yeah.
that shit. Um, so Yeah. Should we move on to the in California local news?
Yeah. Yeah. So, um, yeah, so Kyle Langford, if you have heard of him, you're probably in the 5%, or you're probably a racist. But Kyle Langford is a GOP hopeful for California governor. This last week, he tweeted a pic of Auschwitz gates and then wrote my 0% unemployment plan, calling it a beautiful work camp to stabilize the state. I don't think any jokes about the Holocaust are okay. Um, I don't know how anyone who wants to be a governor can get away with that. Unfortunately, I think that's going to just boost his, standings with people, unfortunately. But yeah, I think that's just an absolutely disgusting thing to have tweeted.
Yeah. Apparently, even so, it says like X nuked the post for hate speech, but he doubled down on it in the replies. But I guess the good news is it says he's a fringe candidate
Uh-huh.
with 50K followers known for his extreme takes. Kind of hoping he's just looking for attention, and there's actually no potential possibility that he would be elected. But it also shows you like we have those types of people in California that would vote for him, and these extreme takes are getting less and less extreme. I feel like they're almost
Uh-huh.
becoming normalized because of the current administration, and it's a lot to take in.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, people just need to stop tweeting. It's just stupid. Stupid people need to stop tweeting. That's what I should say.
that would be a lot of people. But
That's true.
so yeah, I think that's like our last little story of the day. But we do have an election coming up in California for the governor race. Kamala Harris just said that she wasn't running, which I think is for the best. Like, sorry, like you know, gotta love her, but with how bad the election went down, I don't think it would be safe for her to run for
Yeah.
California because I am nervous. There was a lot more red that happened in California. We
Uh-huh.
live in a red area. We know how it can potentially flip. And if that happened, as trans people, we also know we would probably be looking to move into a blue state
Uh-huh.
because
Yeah.
we need medical care. We need to feel safe-ish, So
And
definitely,
and unfortunately, those blue states are getting less and less right now. I mean, you've been talking about what happened with Texas this last week. So they're redistricting Texas so that would get rid of 5 Democratic seats. We're already seeing other states wanting to do the same thing. There is now a backlash from blue states. So we have Governor Newsom who's saying that if Texas does this, he's going to push for California to do the same thing and get rid of red districts and make them blue. All of it, I mean, it's illegal. It's not right, but we are getting to the point where like, yeah, if California flips, kind of fucked.
yeah, yeah, don't want that to happen.
Yeah. No.
So yeah, we'll just keep our fingers crossed. Hope that where it comes after Newsom is one better than Newsom, but two isn't gonna flip us red. So yeah, yeah. Should we just go into what we've been
What
watching?
we're
Wrap it
watching?
up. Yeah.
Yeah. How about you, Cody? What have you been watching this week?
Uh, Latest, so we finished The Bear, which was sad because gosh, it's hard not to get attached to
Uh-huh.
characters, and then you have to wait for the next season. So we'll be waiting, but such a good show, especially if you've been in the food industry. There's some cheesy aspects to it. It's not 100% realistic, but it's basically like the Grey's Anatomy or ER of the cooking world. Okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense. There's
Yeah.
drama and some realistic aspects, but it's not completely. But it's just nice to the character development is great.
Uh-huh.
But finished that, so we moved on to watching Shiny Happy People season 2, which if you haven't watched season 1, get on that because it's crazy. But also season 2, little a little different. It's not about the Duggars, but it is about essentially what you don't realize is it develops to the birth of like the MAGA movement and Christian nationalism. So it opens up this story of how it kind of came to fruition and how it's still coming to fruition. And it's a little scary. And you get to like the things that they were wanting to do and where we're at with that. So kind of buckle in a little bit, don't let it scare you too much, but it's a really good one. We can discuss that more if you end up watching it. But also we started watching I watched season 1 of Chef's Table, but started rewatching it just because I'm like I used to work in kitchens and I still enjoy cooking, and it's just been a nice little supplement to have a little more cooking in my life again. I stopped watching it for quite some time just because I was like burned out and kind of butthurt by the industry because it's just it's a lot.
Yeah,
So I'm kind of reconnecting with my food passion and being okay with not necessarily working in kitchens but still using it for other things. So yeah, that's what we've been watching currently. How about you?
nice. We've been watching, continuing Dawson's Creek. We just started the third season. King of the Hill still. We watched, so on, I believe the first was the first night at the Hollywood Bowl where they did Jesus Christ Superstar live. I don't know if you're a musical person. I'm a musical person, but there's controversy for this because instead of, a man playing Jesus Christ, it's Cynthia Erivo. And you have Adam Lambert playing Judas. So there's a lot of people, a lot of criticism, but that's what's been on my TikTok feed like the last 48 hours is just people recording the performances. And Cynthia Erivo did an amazing job. Adam Lambert did an amazing job. The whole cast did an amazing job. So last night we watched the live recorded Fox performance of Jesus Christ Superstar that was like a couple years ago, and that was with John Legend as Jesus. And John Legend is a great singer, but his voice was not good for that role. So, I've been watching all this on TikTok, and I've been seeing, people, talking negatively about Cynthia Erivo and like her voice wasn't good. This wasn't the right role for her. Yeah, she's not hitting like those really high pitch, kind of like rock star screams that is in the original musical, but she did a much better job than John Legend. Her voice and her portrayal, and mind you, this is on a stage far away, so it's not like, this isn't on camera. I don't know if this was recorded or not, but the emotion and just vulnerability in those clips of her singing, I think it's like Gethsemane. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but that's like the big Jesus song. It's so thought provoking and heartbreaking when you're seeing it from just the betrayal that she did. That's the song where it's like, Jesus is basically talking to God before he's about to get taken away. This is after Judas has left and is about to betray him, and he's basically saying like, if there's a way, that you can still get what you're wanting to get without me dying, like it's kind of like that plea of like, I don't want to die. This wasn't my fight. And then he kind of just gives in at the end, but it's such a strong song. So yeah, I don't know why I just went on a rant about that, but that was, that's been kind of like 90% of my TikTok feed has been clips of the performance. So yeah, that was amazing, and that caused us to watch the other one last night, which was good, but again, John Legend just kind of fell short. There was a couple, songs where like his voice kind of just gives up because it can't sustain that. But yeah, that's kind of been what we've been watching is those, and then we watched the UFO or the Area 51 uh train wreck documentary, and that
Yeah.
was really good. So you'll have to watch that.
Yeah, still gotta watch that. We got stuck on Chef's Table last night, so we didn't make it over there.
Yeah.
But speaking of like music and stuff, cannot forget this is actually pretty relevant. Haley Williams just released a bunch of singles uh,
Mhm.
and it's about, like Christianity and,
Mhm.
all that stuff. I haven't had a chance to listen to it yet because I can't listen to like songs with words while I work. So I have to like go for a walk to be able to listen to it. So I'm going to listen to that this weekend at some point. But it looks really good. So if anyone
Mhm.
wants some new music, Haley Williams just released a bunch of new singles pertaining
Did
to
the did all
Christianity.
of it get released, or was it? I think I just saw one, but her website, it's down now. Her website had like a little planned glitch where like if you had a certain code, you'd enter it in, and it looked like an old like '90s website. And but you could listen to all the tracks, and I did. I think I listened to most of them, and it was amazing.
Okay.
I love Haley Williams. But yeah.
Yeah, she's great. But yeah, so it is on Spotify now. It's funny because they're all single tracks. So if you look on albums, they're all their own album, but you can tell
Oh, okay.
by the design or the cover of the album that it's a single from. uh,
Oh yeah.
she just did things very differently. Either Spotify doesn't know how to classify it, or she was just like, these are all single albums. Uh, you could tell there's also some people who made a playlist for people just to be like, here, it's one
Mhm.
spot here. So if you click on like playlist after searching her name for it, some people just put it together for you. And so I'm gonna listen to that. She's got an amazing voice, and
Mhm.
the thing I like about her, it's like she's so genuine in what she stands for. It is not this uh what's it
It's not a
called?
show.
Yeah, like she actually isn't someone who enjoys the spotlight that much. She's like very private for
Yeah.
as popular as she is. And when she takes a stand for something, she means it. So it just was kind of cool. So I'm gonna enjoy that later.
Yeah, I think I haven't listened to the whole album yet, but so far I think my favorite song that I've listened to is the it's like Marazapine or something like that, and it's a very 90s kind of grunge, no doubt, um, you know, kind of sound. So that's my favorite one so far. We'll have to listen to all of them and then say what our final favorites are next week.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right.
All right. Any
Well,
last
with that,
words?
I think that's it. I think we've covered Trump's golden ballroom of shame. We've got firings. We diverted to trans youth healthcare. We talked about musicals, and I think we covered a lot of stuff this week.
Yeah. So we'll be back next week. But if anyone has any comments or topic suggestions or whatever, feel free to send it our way. We're always happy to cover things that people are, wanting our opinions on. But thanks so much for anyone who has made it this far, who is still listening. We appreciate you more than you know. And yeah, hopefully you'll join us next week.
See you next week.
Peace.